Thank you all for being here. My name is Jabi Menon. I'm a product manager at, this is really scary. I don't know when I'm going to tip over, but I'll try my best to be on the stage. So again, Jabi Menon. I'm a product manager at Palo Alto Networks for our GlobeProtect and the Prisma Access service, which was previously named GlobeProtect Cloud Service. You'll see me use the word GlobeProtect Cloud Service as I'm still trying to figure out, I've been on that product for about 18, 19 months now. So it'll be hard for me to immediately switch to Prisma Access, but I'm trying, right? It has to come from there. So sometimes you may see me use that word, but anybody who's already using GlobeProtect Cloud Service? Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, okay. Good, 4 or 5 people, okay, that's good. And I'm also joined here by Yusuf. I'll let him introduce himself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Yusuf. So I'll be presenting the latter half of the presentation. I look at the first customer initiative at Palo Alto. So my focus would be to tell you about our story, how we are using Palo Alto as a global enterprise, and talk about our journey as we deploy GlobeProtect Cloud Service or Prisma Access. So hopefully, want to keep it interactive. Thank you.
Okay, so the way the presentation today is organized will be into 3 parts. The first part will be about 5-10 minutes we'll spend on the why aspect of it, so you can understand why we build the Prisma Access product and what are the use cases for it. And then we will talk a little bit about roadmap. This is unusual for an Ignite conference to talk about roadmap, but because there were some things that were mentioned in the keynote, so I'm going to give you a little bit more perspective on what was announced in the keynote as to what's coming from the product perspective. And then Yusuf would come back again and talk to you about what was his journey as he deployed as an IT organization, how he transitioned or incorporated Prisma Access, and he was an existing GlobeProtect customer, and how he transitioned or migrated from GlobeProtect to Prisma Access service. Right? Anybody here using GlobeProtect? Okay. All right, that's great. So about half the room. Okay, so that's good. So we'll talk about what's the difference between the 2 services as well in this presentation. Okay. Okay, I'm going to try and use this. So let's go. So very quickly, the first part on the why aspect of it, let's spend about 5-10 minutes on the why aspect of it, right? So if you look at the most common enterprises the way it used to operate a few years ago was that, okay, I have my headquarters and I have my apps in my headquarters and I have users in this headquarters who are going to access these apps, and there is some traffic that needs to go out to the internet, so I have a perimeter security device that helps me secure my internet traffic, right? So this was great, but then the paradigm and the landscape changed. Now I have globally distributed enterprise with users around the world, right? And who are mobile, who wants to compute and work from home offices, airports, hotels, who are traveling across geographies in order to do their work and meetings and things like that. And not only that, then they're using different kinds of devices that they need to compute from. So you have a mix of managed devices, unmanaged devices, IoT devices on your network. And your global organizations are also becoming more and more global with offices around the world. And your applications have also expanded from just being in the headquarters of the data centers to a public cloud. There's a journey for you to migrate your apps from data center to public cloud. You're consuming applications as SaaS, like Office 365, SFDC, and so on and so forth. And then the user have to access this internet. So with this global expansion, the perimeter bound security does not exist anymore, right? So how do you go to be able to allow these businesses to scale and operate at this global level and at this high speed and agility, but keep up with the security stack in order to be able to provide that agility for your businesses with the same level of security that you really need in order to protect your business, right? So when you look at how the VPNs, like remote access VPNs, which was used to be the primary way of you to provide access to your business users, how it used to be deployed was there used to be, most common architecture that I have seen is that you have a VPN appliance in a DMZ, and then you have users around the world. They connect into that VPN appliance. They get access to applications that are on the headquarters or the applications that are in the data center through the DMZ architecture inside your data center, right? So this works for typical remote access VPN. And how the people consume this remote access VPN is either you do split tunneling or you create an on-demand VPN, meaning the user initiates a VPN tunnel whenever they need access to these applications, right? That was the most common form of remote access VPN deployment. But then, when more and more applications are shifting to the cloud and your users are all over the place, the first problem with that one is like, okay, you don't want to backhaul all the traffic back into the headquarters for this user to get access to the applications that are on the internet. So you started creating split tunnel configurations. And the split tunnel configuration means I'm going to let the mobile users go directly access these public cloud, SaaS applications and internet, but there is absolutely no security. The question is, if the user were on your corporate network, would you allow these users to access these applications with no security? If the answer is no, why would you let these users access these applications when they're not on your network? Because the same thing, if they get infected, then they are going to come back onto your network tomorrow. So it was as good as you had an open network anyways to begin with, right? So that was the first question. So okay, no security. And the reason why you don't have any security is because you don't have the infrastructure in order to hairpin all your mobile users back into your corporate network and secure them through that central locations where you had this VPN appliance or your security stack, right? So that was the challenge. You just does not work, right? So then people said, oh, okay, so if that is the environment, okay, so I'm going to now extend my data center to provide applications in the public cloud, right? So I'm moving some workloads into the public cloud. That is the first part of the journey. And if I'm doing that, then saying that, okay, how am I going to provide access to these applications instead of making those public apps available directly on the internet? I said, okay, I'm going to have some connectivity from my headquarters or the data centers back into those cloud apps or the public cloud environment, ExpressRoute, Direct Connect, site-to-site VPN tunnel, Equinix cages, whatnot, right? So that's what that, but it still doesn't solve the backhauling problem. You still have to come back into your corporate network, create that VPN tunnel, and then you write that ExpressRoute, Direct Connect, or whatever in order to go to the public cloud. So it is not providing that optimal path to the user to access these applications. And the reason why you're doing it is because you wanted to provide security. You don't want users to be able to directly access the apps that you have deployed in public cloud directly over the internet because there's no security there, right? So security was forcing you to do this backhauling because then he said, like, okay, so I'm securing my business applications, but I'm still vulnerable to the internet traffic and the SaaS application traffic. There's no security there, right? So the next evolution of that one came out, okay, what if I provided a secure web gateway for my internet traffic, for HTTP and HTTPS traffic, and then I used a product like CASB product or something like that in order to secure my SaaS applications. Now you start to see how the picture is becoming more and more complicated, right? You have now mix of products. You have site-to-site VPNs going between your public cloud infrastructure to your data centers. Then you have remote access VPN coming back into your corporate headquarters. Then you have secure web gateway going into the internet. So different products, different policies, different mixes, different operational team, all have to come together in order to provide that experience to the user. And the same experience does not last because when the user moves into the corporate headquarters, then the experience is completely different for them because it is going through a completely different security stack, right? So when this architecture is what we said, okay, there's something wrong with it. It's operationally not possible to manage all of this different infrastructure at a scale and speed at which the businesses are operating today, right? So that's where the GloProtect was born, right? Like people said, okay, so if I was able to create the same Palo Alto Networks firewalls and deployed in different parts of the world, so I decentralize my security platform. So it's no longer about remote access VPN only. It is about providing secure access to business applications with a full layer of security implied to internet traffic, business applications, SaaS applications, public cloud. People said, okay, if I can deploy this GloProtect infrastructure around the world, be it a VM series firewall, combination of that, like many of you have said you already have GloProtect, so you have deployed some environment like this in your infrastructure. I was talking to a few customers yesterday who said they had like about 10, 15 of these firewalls deployed around the world in order to provide this access for the user, secure access, right? And you manage the same policies across. So your end user's experience is exactly the same, no matter where they are. They travel from US to EMEA or not, their policies are same, they exactly get the same experience. But there was one problem with this picture. And the problem with this picture was like our customers were saying that this is great, but I still cannot have the bandwidth or the resource to deploy this global footprint of firewalls and manage and operate them. And what happens if my demands are shifting? For example, I have a conference in Europe, and suddenly 5,000 users needs to go to Europe. How do I scale my physical infrastructure in order to be able to provide the service? I don't have the staff to operate and manage this global footprint of security stack. That's when Prisma Access was born. It's saying like, what if we took that same thing that you are used to, but instead of you having to deploy and manage, what if we provided that GlobalProtect infrastructure around the world as a service, and you as a customer just have to consume it, and your users will automatically connect to that service no matter where they are? Then you get the benefits of both. So it becomes a really operationally efficient deployment. You don't have to worry about bandwidth. You don't have to backhaul anything to your headquarters or the data centers, and you get direct access to the applications that are deployed in public cloud, SaaS, data center, or no matter what, right? So if you simply say like how it's going to work is the Prisma Access layer can be broken down into three. One is the GlobalProtect app that still needs to be installed, and it's the same GlobalProtect app that needs to be installed on the endpoint. So if you already have a GlobalProtect deployment and the app is already installed on the endpoints, that's exactly the same app. You don't need to make any changes to the endpoint in order to take advantage of Prisma Access, right? But then the Prisma Access layer is built into connectivity layer that allows the users to be able to connect into the service no matter where they are. So we'll have service around the world in about 100 plus locations. That was announced as part of the keynote if you were part of the keynote, which said like, okay, today we operate in about 14, 15 regions around the world, but by the end of the month, you will see us operate in about 100 plus locations in 76 countries around the world. So no matter where your users are, they will always be able to automatically, and the app does this automatically for the user. The user just doesn't need to do anything. It will automatically connect the user to the closest location wherever they are. So if they are in the US West Coast, they'll connect to the US West Coast. If the user is in Asia, they'll connect to a closest country in Asia where the user is from, Singapore to Singapore or Tokyo, Australia, doesn't matter, right? And once they get connected into that connectivity layer through a GP app, then the security layer comes into the play where all the security policies that you manage and control will get applied to it. So we provide full threat inspections, URL filtering, app ID, user ID, the whole Palo Alto Networks security platform, security capabilities are applied to that traffic. And then you can manage all of that infrastructure through Panorama. So it's the same Panorama that you will be able to manage your on-prem firewalls. You use the same Panorama to manage the Prisma Access service as well. It's not an additional cost to manage Prisma Access from the same Panorama. Actually, if you already have a Panorama, it simplifies the management because now you can use the same created policies and you can push the same policies to the Prisma Access as well. It'll just become a parent device group in the Panorama who understand the Panorama terminology. It'll just be device group. It'll become a child device group within that hierarchy, and then you can push exactly the same policies to the Prisma Access service as well, right? And then the cloud is also connected on the back end to all those different applications also. So it's connected, you can connect the cloud to your data centers, to your public cloud environment, direct path to your SaaS applications and internet. So the users are fully connected, and it provides a security service as well. So it is one service that provides a global footprint for fast access to the internet, fully connectivity, full security, and full management capability. Okay. So it's not one or the other. So you don't have to choose between, am I going to provide a fast path to the user or am I going to provide a secure access to the user? This is a solution that allows you to build something which allows faster and local access to the internet, at the same time provide that secure access. Okay. So what are those services that are available in the connectivity layer? You can use our GP app to create an IPsec or SSL VPN into the connectivity layer, or also we support something called clientless VPN so that the user can browse into a portal and they can get access to the applications they need to get access to, right? And from a security stack perspective, you have the full services of URL filtering, threat prevention, Wildfire, App ID, User ID, Cortex Data Lake, and the Prisma SaaS all are built into that security fabric. So that you don't have to buy individual piecemeal or anything like that. The license gets you all of this in pre-built, and the premium support, everything is built into the Prisma Access service. Right. So how do you manage that? Like we talked about, this is how you can manage the Prisma Access service through Panorama. You come to Panorama and there's a plugin that gets deployed in Panorama, and then you use that plugin in order to onboard and manage the Prisma Access service. And from here, I'm going to take a little detour to talk a little bit about the roadmap. And this is the roadmap is what was announced in the keynote as well, right? Panorama is great for all those customers who want to manage this cloud service and if you already have an on-prem firewall. But there are many customers who do not have Panorama or they don't manage the on-prem firewall, so they don't have a large footprint of on-prem firewalls in their environment, or they just want to manage the cloud service completely separately out of their physical infrastructure. So for those set of customers, we are introducing now a cloud-based management service. And it's included with your Prisma Access license. You don't have to buy for this, or you don't have to pay for this. This will be included if you buy the Prisma Access service, and it's a cloud portal. You just log into this cloud service, and you will be able to manage and operate that infrastructure. And one of the bigger changes that is happening from Panorama to the cloud management portal is how the configuration is built. So instead, like, we are going to go more into workflow-based configuration, so that it will guide you through the rest of the process of how you do onboarding, as opposed to you having to go into Panorama and go through different tabs and figure out how you do the configuration. And for all the seasoned Panorama users, that's great, but this product will allow you to do that in a workflow manner. So the first thing that you will see is when you log into the portal, you'll see that if your environment is not set up, it will ask you to set up the product, right? Or set up the Prisma Access environment. And when you click on that, all you need to do is you just need to provide us information about the domain or your business of what you want to name the service. And once you name that, and then it'll ask you to add regions where you want to deploy this infrastructure. You can choose to deploy it worldwide, or you can choose to deploy in certain locations or around the world. And that's all you need to do. So it will tell you, like, these are all the different locations where you have these service available, 100 locations, 100 plus locations in Europe, Asia, and such. And for compliance reasons or any other reasons, if you wanted to go only to certain locations in the world, then you can pick and choose or you can say, nope, I want a worldwide global deployment, and you will get that infrastructure deployed. And once you do that, you just commit it, and then you'll say that, okay, these are the specific regions that I want to connect. For example, North America, you have all these 22 nodes in North America where the service can operate from, right? So the idea there is like pretty quick and close access to the user wherever they are. So they will be able to enter into the service from many different local locations that they are in. And that's about it. And then when you do this, the environment in the backend will get deployed. So within 2 clicks, you are getting about like 100 plus locations deployed as a global VPN infrastructure. And in a typical deployment, if you have to do it yourself, it will probably take a year or 2 for a VPN replacement project. Like that's something that I've heard many times from the customers. In order to do that infrastructure deployment in a worldwide manner, it takes a lot of time and effort. But this one is giving you a VPN deployment deployed in about few clicks. Worldwide, right? And then it also guides you about saying that, okay, let's test your environment before you go any further. Like, so it is guiding you through that process to say that, okay, the infrastructure is ready, your accounts are set up, why don't we test before we go further into doing more configurations. And once you do that, then it'll bring you to this screen wherein you can say that, okay, I want to build in additional services or additional capabilities into that deployment. I want to set it up with enterprise authentication, for example, SAML, etc. Or I want to turn on my clientless VPN portal. I want to turn on my SSL decrypt. I want also to connect my headquarters and the data centers to the service, right? So it'll guide you through that process in order to be able to do that. And once that is done, then from a dashboard, you will be able to see that the service is running and operational. It will tell you more metrics about how many users are currently connected, what's happening over the last few days, how many users are using the service, in what worldwide regions they are using. So you'll get lots of metrics and data from this portal as well. Right? And then the last is the Explorer app, which also gives you ability to look into the logs. So it is going to tell you, okay, how many SaaS applications are used in my environment, how many threats were found in my environment. So this is all now cloud delivered. You will be able to use the same portal or the same management platform in order to be able to go and look at all the logs and such, and run queries and reports and such. So absolutely, after, like, So you will, as a customer, you will have a choice that you want to manage this infrastructure using existing Panorama, or do you want to manage it through a cloud-based management portal. That will be an option available to, and you can pick either or, not both at the same time for obvious reasons, but you will be able to do that. Okay, so that's a little bit sneak peek into what's coming with Prisma Access. And I'll let Yusuf walk us through how he managed this journey in his deployment at Palo Alto Networks as an IT organization.
All right. Can everyone hear me, especially folks at the back? Yes, thumbs up. Perfect. All right. How's it going, everyone? Good. We need more energy. All right. Okay. So, good. Great. So this section I'll talk about how we went from, as you know, Palo Alto Enterprise, global. Palo Alto as a company has a global footprint with about 7,000 plus users all over the place. We have, if you look at our applications, 75% of our apps are SaaS-based apps. The remainder are on-prem. And globally, we are kind of divided into 3 regions, I would say. So in North America, Europe, Asia-Pac, pretty much typical for a global enterprise. And then additionally, we have about 25 plus office locations. And the reason why I mentioned that is because we've been using Global Protect. So a lot of you who are Global Protect users and are looking to go to Prisma Access, you'd be able to relate to it. Today, you have a footprint of your gateways, sparse or dense globally. So that is kind of where we are. From an objective perspective, we wanted to make sure that we secure all of our users and our applications, whether they are SaaS apps and on-prem apps, right? And being a security company ourselves and providing services to our employee base and partners and the whole ecosystem, we wanted to make sure that we have full visibility of the users, what they are doing, and make sure that this, in addition to the visibility, our security policies are consistent. We heavily use user ID, so we wanted to make sure that when we look at Prisma Access, we can pretty much leverage the same capabilities that we have built and extend them, rather than reinventing the wheel or creating something. So I'll walk you through how we did that, and go from there. So for us, with 25 plus worldwide locations, why were we looking at Prisma Access, right? So obviously the managed service capability is really a big plus, right? While you have your own Global Protect, gateways or your firewalls that you want to upgrade, if you want a feature or other things from a Prisma Access perspective, you don't want that burden to be on you to now upgrade your code and constantly look at it. So it's a great idea to have a cloud service that provides you the CI/CD capability, so constantly your service is being upgraded. So that was actually a huge plus for us. So we don't have to spend a lot of energy on gateway deployments, on monitoring performance, but we can get that as a part of a service. So that was really important. The other thing is that with 25 gateways, it's great to have it worldwide, but as a company, as we we are also acquiring other companies, we are growing fast. So the gateway coverage, with the Prisma Access made a lot of sense, because as the service is expanding from 15 gateways to 100 plus, that gives us a great footprint from a service without us having to build each site and basically go the full shebang for that site building. Additionally, we can have our users have a better and more consistent user experience. Because what we've been seeing is, as we were running our Global Protect service, we had to pretty much babysit every gateway, look at ISP circuits, look at the bandwidth consumption, and make sure that we have the right capacity. With Prisma Access, that actually becomes a part of the service. You don't have to worry about it. So that simplifies a lot of our, the policies and the requirements that we had from a business perspective. So just a little bit of background, right? How we were using Global Protect. So we use the always on mode. So users are always connected to Global Protect. We have machine-based certificates both for our laptop and mobile devices. We use AD credentials as well, so we do two-factor authentication. We have 20 plus GP gateways. So the heading of this slide, Prisma Access and the Prisma Access gateways, there's a little mistake here. It's GP because this all relates to our current GP deployment. So it's Global Protect. We also use internal host detection for users. So essentially, if a user is at a corporate location, and if they are on a campus, which is a Palo Alto office, then they simply detect that they are in a corporate environment, and they don't have to establish an IPsec connection now to the Prisma Access service. They can simply use their connectivity. Their GP agent will still be on, but since we use that for user ID collection, HIP profiles, and HIP data, we keep on monitoring those sort of things from our constant security monitoring perspective. And then basically the interesting thing is that as part of trying to be, at least from my charter's perspective, which is acting as a first and best customer for Palo Alto, we also moved our Panorama and a lot of our sites to 9.0. So this is interesting that in this deployment, our Panorama was running 9.0, and as we started, we had actually rolled out the Prisma Access as a limited global rollout. So we wanted to make sure that as we look at some of these capabilities, that our licenses are properly activated, we have the right licenses, and so on. So sort of that was some of the context. What Joby mentioned about the roadmap, where later on you'd be able to use Prisma Access as a workflow. A lot of these things will be simplified as well. So for us, basically, having a checklist of these things was important because if you're looking at Prisma Access today, then pretty much you can checkmark these things and make sure that your journey from Global Protect to Prisma Access is governed by these things, and you'll be in good shape. I'll talk about a couple of our design considerations as well. So for us, if you think about these bottom three clouds, this is basically the entire Palo Alto enterprise. So think of the left-hand side as being North America, with the bulk of our users, AD services. Think of the middle cloud as EMEA, and think of the left-hand side cloud as Asia Pac. So being an engineering company, being a global company, we have a lot of local resources, local apps, local labs that we wanted people in those regions to use. So what we decided is to basically go with 3 service connections and make sure that our users, our mobile users globally, can access the services worldwide. Plus, if they're in a certain region and they want to access those applications, they can actually access those as well. So what we did is we used BGP for building our service connections, and that's one of the options. A simpler option is static route, but since we've been using BGP across our network pretty much as a standard, so what we did is we defined mobile user space, we defined an infrastructure subnet. These are different steps as part of Prisma Access setup. A couple of things I would quickly mention is that the mobile user space should be a dedicated space. Typically, you will carve it out of your existing address space, RFC 1918. One thing to watch out here is make sure that the mobile user space is unique, because you do not want, for example, a lot of home routers allow you to use 192.168 address space. So if that were your mobile user space, when a person connects from home, they will have some conflicts with the IP address where the address, basically the client will may be confused and say, well, you're using the same address space. So just watch out for that. That's just a best practice. For the infrastructure subnet, you allocate a decent /24, because then when you start building out these service connections, and we build them one by one, we didn't build all of them in parallel. So we started with North America first on the left-hand side, and then went to EMEA, and then went to Asia Pac, so one by one. And the key thing to watch is that you get these addresses, and I've kind of marked them in red, like x.y.zz/32. So So that is basically a dynamically allocated address that you get out of your address space. And now you can build an IPsec tunnel, and you can build BGP peering, basically with the GPCS cloud. So your IT infrastructure or your global infrastructure has now 3 different BGP peering points with the Prisma Access cloud. And the mobile users, as they will be authenticated, are now able to access all of your resources. What we also did is, from our North America, we pretty much advertised all of the connectivity because a bulk of data center and other capabilities lie in North America. But from Europe and Asia Pac, we actually advertised very specific BGP routes which relate to local applications, local resources, which users would access in those regions. So that ensured that if somebody wants to go to a resource which is in Europe somewhere, then that very specific route, which is a longer prefix match, is preferred, and the user gets to go to that resource through the appropriate service connection. What we also did is that on the way back, because that's how the traffic comes into your infrastructure, on the way back, we actually defined on our edge firewalls, so the one which is peering with the GPCS cloud and North America, the one with the BGP ID of CCCC. So we actually generated a static saying that to address the mobile user space or all the mobile users, you go back to the GPCS cloud. And we pointed it through the IPsec tunnels endpoint interface that we learned from the Prisma Access provisioning. So the advantage of doing something like this is that all the traffic can now, when an application is sending the traffic back to the user, you can actually tell the network where to get it, how to route it back. And we redistributed that static route throughout our infrastructure. Additionally, what we did is for EMEA and Asia Pac, because these are smaller, like sites, we actually put static routes saying the same thing that, if you want to get to the mobile user space, you take these local service connections respectively. So with the combination of that, we had static routes which were being redistributed by BGP internally everywhere, but then Europe and Asia Pac was also learning about those mobile user space through the static routes, and those were preferred. So that ensures that as the traffic is going from one of the regions back to the mobile user, it is taking the closest service connection out. It is not being rerouted through another region and going back. And obviously, we used path tracking to make sure that if the IPsec tunnels went down, that those static routes would be withdrawn. So those were some of the things we did in order to design the routing space. And from a mobile user perspective, we were able to reuse a lot of our global protect configuration. So for those of you who are looking to migrate, that's actually very good news. So we still use always on. We were able to use our existing certificates, and the existing AD authentication for mobile users, which is great. You don't have to redistribute these certificates, so that saves a lot of time and effort. From an access policy perspective, our laptops, they have the GP agent or the GP app. So people use laptops and they are able to connect to the 2 different applications from wherever they are. On the mobile devices, which are also protected by the same certs and AD, we don't use the GP app right now. So what we are looking at is basically capabilities on the roadmap where we can use the combination of clientless VPN with the Aperture reverse proxy. So that will ensure that not only mobile devices, but any unmanaged device which wants to access a SaaS resource in the cloud, when a user authenticates, so let's say I take my daughter's laptop and I want to access my work Google Drive. So the advantage of using the reverse proxy is that I can actually have Aperture, which is now rebranded as Prisma SaaS, recognize me as a user when I authenticate, and then it'll redirect my session through the closest Prisma Access gateway. So that way, all of the same security policies that I have put in place can be re-leveraged even if I'm coming from an unmanaged device. And there I can fine-tune my security policies to say if somebody's coming from an unmanaged device, let's say restrict their access or don't let them download a document or whatever, right? So you can have that kind of control, which you wouldn't have earlier on. So that's why we are looking at this capability on our roadmap as well. We also allow our users to disable the GP application. A lot of our engineering users are doing testing, or a lot of SEs in the field are doing demos, for example, to customers like yourself, and they want, for example, for a while to be running something where they want, the app to be off. So the good thing with Prisma Access is that you can set a disable timer, and once that time passes, like 2 hours in our case, the GP agent will come on again. So that's kind of slightly different from the current global protect behavior, where once you disable the agent, it will not be enabled. So for us, because it's helping us with user ID, with HIP checks, and also making sure that the user is always connected, through our infrastructure with the same security policies, that's actually really helpful. So we found that capability to be really good for us in terms of making sure people do their work, but they're still part of the security visibility that we want. A couple of other things from a mobile user perspective. So we still use our internal host detection. So the portal or the portal that or the gateway that we had for GP, we basically are re-leveraging that. We were able to use our security policies as well as, so we use SSL decrypt for our egress traffic, just as our global security visibility policy. So we were able to pretty much extend all of these, across our Prisma Access portal. And the way we were able to do that was to basically, as Joby mentioned earlier, reuse the existing device group capabilities and simplify them. Because when you have on-prem firewalls, you would have something like I have at the bottom of this slide, where I have a global protect zone, I have several trust zones, and I have several untrust zones. So Prisma Access simplifies a lot of this behavior, where now you have trust and untrust. So pretty much your existing security policies can be simplified. You would actually have to map them, simplify them, and you can reuse them as is. So that's actually really a big win. You don't have to have 2 sets of policies really to work with. And you can extend pretty much anything like SSL decrypt in our case. So what that means is that when a user connects from somewhere on the internet and they're, let's say, going to a Netflix or they're going wherever on the internet, then that Prisma Access gateway will allow the SSL decrypt policy as the traffic egresses, and gives me the visibility that I want. So essentially, rather than us using split tunnel, we can actually, because of the density of the gateways spread all over the internet, we are essentially able to route the traffic out from the closest point to the internet, but at the same time have full visibility. So that's actually really helpful for us. And then one thing as you do all of this is, in our case, we were using Okta for basically MFA authentication as well. So don't forget to whitelist your GPCS address space. I've put a sample curl script that you can even find in the documentation. So what we did is we were able to bake this curl script into our automation, because every few weeks, as the Prisma Access service is upgraded, gives you more features, gives you more gateways, then your whitelist address space will actually expand. So you want to make sure that if you are whitelisting it for public cloud VPCs, or if you're whitelisting it in Okta or other identity systems, this is automatic. So you don't suddenly experience users saying, well, I can't work right now. I'm asked all the time about MFA, and it's really annoying. So it becomes part of your automation. Any questions, by the way? I also want to keep it a little bit more discussion oriented, because now I'm switching gears from going from how we designed to kind of how we started to roll out. Because as you will go through this experience, there are design considerations, but then there's equally important how you roll out capabilities and how you measure and monitor them.
I think we'll take the questions at the end.
Okay.
Flow perspective. take the questions
Okay,
at the end.
perfect. So I won't forget you. So from a rollout perspective, what we did is we actually identified champions worldwide across 3 different regions. And the way we defined the champions is we pretty much broke down different user profiles. So let's simply say, in your company, you can have sales users, marketing users, engineering users, IT users, and so on. Unique user profiles who would actually, access your SaaS applications, access different resources. For example, marketing has a lot of third-party vendors with whom they work. So they want to make sure that, all of those third-party, resources are accessible, and so on. So, use your champions or early adopters kind of in a very diverse manner to cover pretty much all the use cases. So that's really helped us. And then the second thing we found really helpful was rather than actually users having to go and add the Prisma Access portal to their GP application, which may work for engineering-oriented users, but if somebody's a lawyer in your company, they definitely will struggle with it. They will give up. So what we did is we did a lot of testing with pushing the portals through the GP agent, both for Mac and Windows platforms. And we made sure that the Prisma Access portal was enabled as a default. So for most users, they just open their laptop, and now suddenly they are in an always-on mode to the Prisma Access cloud. So try to make that experience for them as transparent as possible, right? What we also did as we were rolling out to a lot of these champions is we did a lot of communication. So we knew who these 300 plus people were. We were reaching out to them saying, you will be the champions, do provide us feedback, and we want to track some of the capabilities. So the smaller your early adopter group is, and the closer you are in terms of setting their expectations and getting feedback from them, the more important it is, right? Because after all, if somebody has a problem, they have a connectivity issue, there's a security policy issue, and so on, then they can always go back to the Global Protect portal. But what we did is we also set up a Slack channel where we put all of these guys on that Slack channel so that as they were experiencing these issues, they could quickly just say, hey, I cannot reach my Google Cloud VPC that I made, and most likely it's a whitelisting issue. So you learn a lot about those, and you can quickly fix those user experience or connectivity issues with the early adopters. And then obviously, we made sure that the licensing, the Cortex data lake, logging capacity, and everything were adequately in place. There, as you look at our documentation, there is, calculation where you can basically look at how much of logging space you need and so on. So you can leverage on that as well. What we also did as we were doing an internal rollout, is that we had to build some of the reporting in Splunk to track how many users we had rolled out the service to, how many of them were using it, how many of the users were still on Global Protect, because let's say somebody said, I don't like Prisma Access because something doesn't work, they changed their portal. How many users, the 498 number is, how many users were not using any kind of portal because they had turned things on? And usually this would be contractors who are dormant for a while, or basically machines which were earlier being used on, but they are not being used. So it helped us keep track. How many users are using the internal gateway, right? Because those users are technically not on your Prisma Access IPsec connection, they are connected internally, right? So this allowed us, and this report was over a period of last 30 days. Because when you look in the panorama, you can see instantaneous usage. But if you're sitting in the middle of the day, maybe Asia Pac has not even come up. The users have not even woken up, right? And some of the users in Europe are already logging off. So we ran these reports on a daily basis for basically for a period of a month and a half just to see traction. So this helped us track our users, who's doing what, and get a better understanding of our deployment. So when we did a rollout, we first targeted our communications to very targeted users. So let's say if the team is rolling out Prisma Access to first 1,000 users, target your communications to them. We pointed people to FAQs to educate the user. So this was more to educate the user, help them understand what they're doing. So if they're on internal host detection, they are basically not using GPCS. So when they open a trouble ticket, they don't say, hey, GPCS is not working, I don't know what is going on, and so on. And we tracked issues. Most of them were whitelisting related issues. We even exposed the most known issues to our users. So a lot of them, for very simple, trivial things, they can take care of their issues themselves. And we basically finished the rollout probably in a matter of a couple of weeks, given that we did really good investment on our champions. So real quick, our learnings, right? So a couple of things I want to call out because we're also running out of time is when you set up Prisma Access, you don't have the same level of control as you do when you're setting GP gateways, right? Because you own these firewalls. So it's a different experience for network engineers. Initially they will complain, but given the simplicity of it, as they get used to it, they will forget about it. So that will be one transition. We were able to leverage BGP across service connections. I think we still need to keep on hardening that design, especially we use SD-WAN devices. So our SD-WAN devices today do not support BGP. We use CloudGenix. So the version we are running with CloudGenix does not support BGP. So this is an interesting area where we will continue work. And I think other than that, focus on the champions, focus on your rollout messaging. Couple of things that we thought were challenges, right? So with Prisma Access, the product is improving, and I was really excited to see the workflow-based approach that Joby was showing. But when we were deploying it, the documentation was a huge nightmare, right? So one thing you do is when you, and the good thing is the engineering team is almost upgrading documentation on a daily basis. So as you're deploying it, make sure you have the latest documentation. That goes really a long way. Troubleshooting is a little bit also, I would say, awkward for network engineers who are used to getting on these GP gateways. Now they don't have access to the Prisma Access gateways because they're being offered as a service. So they have to go through Panorama plugin. They have to look at all of this stuff. So that is also another thing to call out from a methodology perspective. And then obviously, the reporting metrics are not the greatest because they are instantaneous, and that's why we had to build reports. So for us, for the next steps, because for us it's a journey as well, just constantly moving the needle, rolling out GPCS, but then saying, what can we do better? So SD-WAN integration, we will not take GP away completely. We will still leave 1 or 2 gateways for some of our legacy users, so it will be kind of in a hybrid mode. We are looking at Prisma Access in combination with Aperture Reverse Proxy. That will give us really good capability to secure our SaaS apps from unmanaged devices, mobile devices as well. So that's a huge. And then obviously enhancing the reporting, not only just over time, but you also want to see users by org or by region. And by org is important because what typically happens is in your companies, you will have a leader, a VP or somebody who will say, my organization will go and adopt this first. And he should have capability to look into how his org is doing. Are all his reports, or 50% of his reports, 80% of his reports, utilizing Prisma Access or not? So those are some of the things to keep in mind. That's pretty much it, guys. Let's spend some time on Q&A.